When it comes to the Enterprise and the Reliant and the Wrath of Khan, there seems to be a lot of confusion as to which ship is more powerful, but even more basically, there's question as to which ship is bigger. I've seen opinions ranging from it's definitely smaller with less surface area and a lower internal volume, to it's probably at least as big as the Enterprise, but it's just more compact, so it looks smaller. And it is true that the Reliant is quite a bit more compact than the Enterprise. The Reliant can fit into a 2 million cubic meter box, whereas a box big enough to contain the Enterprise would be some 3 million cubic meters. So in that sense, the Reliant is smaller. But what's important isn't how big the box is, but rather how much of that box is filled with a starship. Using the miracle of 3D software, I can pretty quickly determine the internal volume of each of these ships. The process is largely automatic, so I can't really walk you through it, but I ran a few different independent calculations, and while there were minor differences between each result, I think we can close in on some decently reliable figures for each ship. The Enterprise came to roughly 285,000 cubic meters, and the Reliant was about 340,000 cubic meters. So the Reliant, despite being 70 meters shorter than the Enterprise, is actually 19% larger in terms of how much ship there is. And it's really not so hard to accept. This huge rectangular extension on the saucer is no laughing matter, and given how wide it is, it's no wonder that it has more volume than the secondary hull of the Enterprise. Now, of course, there is actually one more issue to consider, and that would be the ratio of surface area to internal volume. Now, why would that be a consideration? Well, unlike the hull on a digital 3D model, the hull on a real-life vessel is not infinitely thin. The hull itself would actually take up quite a bit of the internal volume. So if one ship has a lot more hull in proportion to its volume, it might actually change the data quite a bit. Now, there's really no solid data for how thick the hulls of these ships are, but I guess one decent benchmark would be the depth of the docking rings on the travel pods that we see in the films. According to production drawings, the docking ring is 18 inches deep, or some 0.46 meters. Now, the hull could be thicker or thinner depending on a number of factors, but I think it's safe to assume that this is at the very least a decent benchmark. At any rate, it's the best and likely the most definitive answer that we could possibly have. So assuming an average hull thickness of 0.46 meters, the Enterprise with a surface area of 80,000 square meters would have some 37,000 cubic meters dedicated just to the hull. The Reliant with a surface area of 95,000 square meters would have about 44,000 cubic meters of hull. If we subtract these figures from our previous findings, the Enterprise is left with 248,000 cubic meters, and the Reliant is left with 296,000 cubic meters. Altogether, with that factor considered, the Reliant is still 19% larger than the Enterprise. So I think that definitively answers which is the bigger ship. And the Reliant manages to have more internal volume and a more compact profile. That's a huge increase of efficiency. So as a considerably more efficient design, it's no wonder that after the 2290s, the Constitution class all but disappeared, but the Miranda class would stay in service for over 80 years to come. But that's all I have to say for today. This was just an interesting thought that I had, and I hope you found it fun to maybe discover something new about these classic ships. I love exploring questions like this in Star Trek, and if you have ideas for other things to analyze, I would love to hear about it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.